Hello, my loves. I'm so grateful that you have tuned in for episode 1 of my new endeavor, the Pretty Girl Privilege podcast. And I decided to go with that name because I feel like I have a odd relationship with attractiveness. You know, I wasn't always considered the pretty girl. And so I just find it hilarious, like the ways that I view life because of that versus like someone like my daughter who has been born beautiful. And I'm just like, I worry about the psychological repercussions for her. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but I'm just like, this baby has literally always been gorgeous and doted upon. And we all know at some point the applause stops. And I think people who have not always been doted on and admired handle that part of life better. You know, there's some point where people are not going to be saying nice things about you and admiring you in a positive way. There's going to be these moments where you have fallout with society as a whole almost, especially in the age and era of social media. Because listen, people be ready to cancel you. You just out here living your human life. You slip up and say a word incorrectly. You leave a letter off a certain group of letters. You have offended somebody, ma'am, sir. Sir, ma'am. You have. Unintentionally or intentionally, it doesn't matter because people like to project their own views about your intention into the narrative. So you can't control that. So again, I worry about it because my daughter, like, I remember I had to stop her. She was like, 4, barely talking well or whatever, but people are admiring her and like, oh my God, you're so cute. And she's like, oh yeah, I know. People say that all the time. And she's not trying to be anyway. This has really been her life experience. Like, no, Mom, remember that time we were in the store and the guy, he told me I was even cuter than his own daughter. So I must really be cute. And I'm just like, it's crazy to say out loud, but it's really her life experience. And I think that's what made me look at stuff differently because I go, oh, my poor child. When that bubble pops, hopefully it doesn't, but when that bubble pops, I will have to be there to catch her because as my son likes to say, he says my daughter is very much chalant. She does not have a nonchalant bone in her body. So she cares. She cares about everything, though, not just what people think. You would think someone who has this mentality of, I am great. Everybody's been telling me I'm great my whole life would not be a very nice person, but she's also a very nice person. I remember her hearing about Lizzo being bullied online and she was so appalled. Like, I cannot believe they are doing that and saying that to her. We need to make a video and send it to her so I can tell her how great she is and how much I love her. And I'm just like, babe, Lizzo is not going to open your video message. It's probably just not going to happen for you. And she's like, But she's always like that, even with her friends. It's like her friend is battling weight as she gets older and she's calling herself a big back. And Ariana's like, no, you are not a big back. She's like, and you know what? If you are a big back, I'm a big back too. Like, Mom, are you a big back? And I was like, yeah, I guess I am, I was like, it doesn't really matter though, I remember growing up, my mom would project weight issues onto me. And I was like a regular kid, just out playing, living life. It's the 90s, we were a bunch of wild cowboys just riding our bikes until the street lights come on. And she would look at me sometimes because I was always, I'm from the South. So it's always, Sori's kind of big boned. Like, it was a thing. I had thick legs and thick thighs and always been a thicker girl. And she would get upset sometimes when she would just look at me and she's like, no, you are getting fat. You need to get on my exercise bike. So instead of just letting me go outside and play and have fun, I might have to, spend an hour in her bedroom on an exercise bike to make sure I don't get fat, according to her. The reality is that I think I would have been okay with the weight gain because it would have taken some of the attention away from me, especially like in the middle school years. Like, imagine being a kid who grows up with nobody really telling you you're beautiful or anything too much about yourself other than you are weird and in your own world and a nerd, a geek, and things like that. And so 7th grade comes around and bam, you're beautiful. But you see the stuff starting to happen, or I would see the stuff starting to happen, and I started trying to hide it. I remember as early as 6th grade, like my breasts started coming in, and boys, because I hung with boys a lot, they would try to look down my little bodysuit shirts. And so I started like wearing really tight sports bras and like basically trying to tape up my breast as they were developing, because I didn't want to be seen in that way, because I had some other stuff I was dealing with. We'll get into it all at some point. But yeah, I had some other stuff I was dealing with. And it just made me want to not be feminine, you know? And so I remember that summer I spent it in Philly, and my cousin Donique, she would wear like baggy clothes, kind of like the Brat or Crisscross. And I was like, oh my God, that is it. That's what I need, you know, that's going to do it. And so that's what I came back home for the beginning of the school, my 7th grade school year, with like the baggiest stuff I could find. Flannel shirts, big T-shirts, giant jorts, as we call them now. But I wore that in 7th grade, but I still wanted to have my hair and nails done like every couple of weeks. So it was I was an oddity, I guess, when you look back at my old pictures. But yeah, I remember thinking this will keep the boys from liking me. And to an extent it did. You know, I had a couple of boyfriends that year, but I remember it was like the really nice guys. And I realized now that is the core of what I'm attracted to. You know, for years, my friends were like, you don't really have a type. You are everywhere with it. And looking back at how it all started, I realized I really like nice guys. That's my thing. That's the thing that gets me. I remember my first boyfriend in 7th grade. We were walking down the hall, and I could tell, you know, I don't know. He was in 8th grade. And I didn't know he was my boyfriend, you know, yet. I guess I think I would manifest stuff like that. So I was with one of my friends. Well, actually, I was with 3 of my friends, but one of them knew him. And so he spoke to her because they knew each other. But I was looking at him because he was looking at me. And so my friend was like, you know, Victoria, he was speaking to me. And I'm like, he was looking at me. And I wasn't trying to be away, but he was looking at me. He ended up being my boyfriend. And I should have just stuck with him, because I would have saved myself a lot of middle and high school drama, because he really was a nice guy, you know? But again, I let my insecurities kick in, and I self-sabotaged that as early as the 7th grade. This stuff was manifesting, and I had no idea what I was navigating through. But that is hilarious. I remember I made it through 7th grade, then 8th grade. Everything was fine until I decided to be outgoing, something I'm not. Not in the traditional sense, at least. But I decided I wanted to be one of the managers, or like a water girl, for the girls' basketball team, our 8th grade basketball team. And the Coach Evans, I will never forget this. This man told me that to be a manager, I would at least have to go out for the team. So I'm like, okay, bet. I'll go out for the team. No way I'm making it because I'm trash on the court. All I can do is shoot, because that's like my brother had the goal in the backyard of my aunt's house, and I would just shoot. Nobody ever played basketball with me, you know? For some odd reason, that man put me on that team. I feel like it was to be spiteful. I don't know. He was really a nice guy, but I don't understand how or why, because I definitely rode the bench the entire year. But that being said, one of his rules was that on game days, we had to dress like young ladies. And that meant like dresses and stuff. And, you know, I was out of that element because I didn't want to be seen in a feminine way. But, you know, I did kind of want to be part of this group that got to leave school early sometimes. You know, the stuff that matters when you're in middle school. So I told my mom what he said, and this is how detached I was from fashion, that sort of thing. I had fashion. I've always had my own style, but when he put that dress like a young lady restriction there, I was lost. So my mom goes to the mall by herself because she knows I'm not going to get anything appropriate in her eyes. She goes to the mall by herself, and she buys me all of these really cute little mini skirt dresses, like go-go boots with heels, like really cute, like 70s retro style type stuff. And I was like, what in the world am I going to do with this? But game day came, and so I put the clothes on. I grew up going to church, so I knew how to wear a dress when I needed to. Just didn't want to. And so I put the clothes on. I get to my algebra class, and all of these boys all day are just like after me. I felt like I was being hunted. And I don't say that to be pleasant, because it wasn't a pleasant experience for me. I remember going into the corner, Miss Clark's algebra class, like, because I sat in the middle, like in a desk. But that day, I just went and kind of balled up in a corner, trying to like hide myself from human eyes or something. Maybe consumption, I don't know. But a boy in my class who had been in my classes with me since like fourth grade, so he knew I was an oddity. And he just goes, Victoria, they just think you're pretty. It's okay. And I was like, oh, because nobody had ever thought I was pretty before. Not really. And I certainly didn't think that about myself. And I was like, oh, man. And I didn't know how to handle that. I think that was a very pivotal moment. It sounds crazy, but it was a very pivotal moment for me, because he made that assertion, and then we go to lunch and we walk in the cafeteria, and I can hear girls who have never really paid any attention to me saying things like, oh, she thinks she's all that. She thinks she's cute. What does she want to be, a girl or a boy? They said some other ugly stuff too. And so I'm getting like all of these messages all of a sudden, when I was used to being able to just fly below the weird radar, because I'm a weirdo, and that was my thing. And so I went home, and luckily my cuss sister was going through some stuff and had come back home for a brief interval, like maybe a semester or two, just to decide on some things about her life. But she's also a therapist. And so she's always been like my therapist, whether she likes it or not, because she's like, I can't counsel you. And I was like, well, I'm getting your advice, period. So there's that. I need cuss sister advice. It doesn't have to be professional at all. And so I told her, I was like, these girls, all of a sudden, like, they don't like me. And she was like, why don't they like you? I was like, I don't know. They said I think I'm all that. And she goes, well, if you don't think you're all that, who's going to think you're all that? And I'm like, oh. And that clicked something in me that never turned off, Despite the things I go through, I battle with. Of course, I have my insecurities just like any other human, my anxiety and all the fun things. But it did teach me, like, I have to value myself. And just because I value myself doesn't mean I'm belittling another person. And that eventually evolved into me understanding that people project, and that doesn't really have anything to do with me. And other people's opinions of me don't have anything to do with me. That's a them problem, because when we put too much value and weight in how we are being perceived by others, we lose ourselves. One moment they are, showering you with positive attention, and then the next moment they're breaking you down. We have to recognize that it's all just observation. And they're free to have those observations, but you can't let those observations define you. And that's what I hope to instill in my daughter. And that's just something I hope made sense to y'all. And until next time, it has been the first episode of the Pretty Girl Privilege podcast with me, Baby Doll. Thank you for tuning in. I love you.